In our number 10 spot, we have Burg Eltz. This German castle dates back to 1157, so it's no surprise that there are many myths and legends surrounding it. The most common tale is that of a young countess named Agnes. Agnes was betrothed or promised to another noble, but after meeting him, she called off their future wedding. Apparently, this guy was just the worst, and also, even if he wasn't, no one could blame her for calling off a wedding that she didn't want to have. But of course, things quickly went awry. This noble guy was mad that she had rejected him, so the scorned lover laid siege to the castle. Agnes fought to defend her home, but she passed away during the battle. This is the story behind why her spirit is said to haunt the Burg Eltz castle, many saying the strongest presence is felt in her former bedroom. It is said that her spirit is quite mournful. Apparently, even her battle armor and axe remain on display as well. In our number 9 spot today, we have Huska Castle. According to folklore, the Huska Castle, which is located just north of Prague in the Czech Republic, is built over a bottomless hole that leads directly to hell. The legend claims that the 13th century King Ottokar II offered a pardon to any prisoner who agreed to be lowered into the pit in order to report what was down there. The first prisoner who was lowered into the pit only lasted 30 seconds before he started screaming. Legend goes that when he was brought back up, his hair had turned white and he had aged 30 years. He was also telling stories of half-human creatures that flew through the darkness with horrific wings. The castle was built over the hole without things like a water source or any kitchens, and it is said that this was because it wasn't actually meant to be used by humans, but rather a place to capture the demons should they rise from this mysterious hole. The castle can now be visited as a tourist attraction, but enter at your own risk. In our number 8 spot today, we have Edinburgh Castle. The Edinburgh Castle is located in Scotland, and while it is one of the most popular tourist attractions, it is also apparently extremely haunted. It is said that many years ago, a piper was sent down into the tunnels that are below the castle, which connect it to the Royal Mile. The piper was told to play his instrument while down there so that his progress throughout the tunnels could be tracked, but halfway through his journey, the music stopped. Sadly, the piper was never seen again. This had led to the story of the piper continuing to haunt certain areas of the castle. Apparently, he still roams around, and sometimes even faint music can be heard. There is also apparently a drummer who is said to haunt the castle as well, but he only appears when the castle is about to be attacked. Honestly, I didn't know before this that I wanted a guard ghost for myself. In our number 7 spot today, we have Bran Castle. This is a castle located in Transylvania that is often known as Dracula's Castle. This Romanian landmark is commonly referred to as the home of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and honestly, what could be more terrifying than Dracula? Well, perhaps the real person he is said to be inspired by, Vlad the Impaler, who is also said to have some sort of association with this castle. The building features beautiful articulate designs and vast staircases, but it is also said to be the home to the supernatural. Maybe it's just the lore and the legends surrounding this piece of historical architecture, or maybe there really is something more sinister going on here. In our number 6 spot today, we have Leap Castle. This castle sits in Ireland, and it was built somewhere between the 13th and the late 15th century. Legend has it that this castle has seen an unnerving amount of gruesome deaths, so it is no wonder it sits on a list of haunted castles. Story goes that during a struggle for power within the O'Carroll clan, who are said to at the time have been known for poisoning their dinner guests, one brother rammed a sword into another. This other brother was a priest, and at the time he was holding a mass in the chapel of the castle. The chapel is now called the Bloody Chapel, and it is rumored to be haunted by the priest. To make matters even worse, during renovations to the castle in the early 1900s, those working here ended up finding a secret dungeon below the chapel where they found a ton of human skeletons. The dungeon was designed in a way that prisoners would fall through a secret trapdoor where they would then fall onto wooden spikes on the ground, where they would then die a slow and painful death, but of course not without the members above them being able to hear this horrific happening. This is all to say that the rumors of the haunting make a lot of sense. In our number 5 spot today, we have Belcourt Castle. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. This ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this very specific set of chairs. The reports include things like feeling chills racing up and down their spines, or feeling a strange sensation and a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing these stories might be enough to explain the energy shift that some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of the chair by some sort of force would be absolutely terrifying. In our number 4 spot today we have Chateau de Brissac. This is a castle located in the Loire Valley in France. For years people have shared stories about this castle, claiming that it is haunted. The most famous story has to deal with the castle's owner, Jacques de Brézy. One day Jacques caught his wife Charlotte cheating on him with another man, which is said to have driven him to take both of their lives. Now it is said that the souls of Charlotte and her secret lover still haunt the castle to this day. People have reported seeing Charlotte wandering the halls, often wearing a green dress, and in the chapel of the castle. Legend goes that she had gone to the chapel to try and absolve herself of her sins, maybe in the hopes of not being trapped in the castle any longer. Here is the scariest part of this whole story though. I mean, aside from the killing, which is clearly the worst part. Her ghost is said to have no face, and instead is just 2 black big holes. This is why she is often referred to as the Lady in Green, or the Lady with no face. In our number 3 spot today we have Vorgard Castle. This castle sits in Denmark, and it features the works of some of the most famous artists ever, such as Raphael, Goya, and El Greco. But while that is a fascinating reason why many people visit the castle today, there are some who visit the castle thanks to some gruesome stories of the past. The most famous of these dark stories is that of Ingeborg Skeel, who acquired the castle in 1578. Apparently, he quickly took the life of the architect who designed it so that he could never design another building quite as beautiful. It's a pretty insanely selfish reason to take someone's life. People today still report seeing the ghost of the architect around the castle, especially at night and dressed in white. People also report feeling an extremely chilling sensation in the castle as they pass one of the most famous of its dungeons. This room was designed so that a person wasn't able to stand up or lie down completely, and there were no holes for light or air either. Haunted or not, the cruelties of the past are bound to send a shiver down anyone's spine. In our number 2 spot today we have the Palace of Versailles. In 1901, 2 women were wandering the gardens in Versailles trying to find Marie Antoinette's getaway when they found themselves lost. They ended up in front of an old farmhouse that had a really old plow sitting outside of it when they suddenly saw 2 men walk past them wearing long grayish coats with small 3-cornered hats. They could tell immediately that something was not right. They asked the men where to find the getaway, and the men told them to follow a path nearby that ended up taking them to a gazebo where their bad feeling got even worse. They saw another man at the gazebo that gave them dirty looks, when someone else came running up to them, warning the woman that they were going the wrong way. This person explained to them that they should cross a bridge and then they'll find what they're looking for. The women entered a building when they saw a woman sitting and painting and wearing a very old-fashioned dress. Suddenly they heard a door slam and saw a man running towards them. Again, this man explained that the entrance that they were looking for was around the back of the building and led them to their real destination where they met other tourists. When they finally got here, that bad feeling they had finally went away and they knew that they were safe. The woman then began discussing what they had seen because they were both pretty creeped out. It turns out that they didn't see the same things. One of the women said she never saw a woman painting. The 2 began to look at paintings of Marie Antoinette only to realize that the woman the one saw painting was actually Marie herself. They later also found out that the old farmhouse and the plow that they had seen had been removed from the property in 1789. It seems like these 2 women were definitely seeing some ghosts from the past. In our number 1 spot today we have the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City is located in Beijing, China, and it has quite a reputation. This building used to be the Imperial Palace, but it is now a museum and it sees a ton of tourists every year. This building has quite a history of death, so it is truly not surprising that it may be haunted. Since the palace opened to the public in the 1940s, there have been a ton of reports of paranormal activity, mostly relating to a woman dressed in white. I know a lady dressed in white is a bit of a trope at this point, but it is always scary to think of. After all, it's not like the ghost gets to decide its outfit. Anyway, apparently this lady strolls around the palace, but she is absolutely sobbing, which is very sad and quite eerie. I guess maybe it's better to encounter a sad ghost than an evil one though? At this point, I'm just not sure.
Starting us off at number 10 are satanic symbols. Back in 2013, a couple named Janine and AJ moved into a quaint and sweet little house in Springfield, Louisiana. They were so excited to get the house and were amazed at the cheap price. But soon after they moved in, it quickly became apparent as to why the price may have been so low. Things started off small, as it usually does, with their radio turning on all by itself or seeing the lights flicker independently, but soon enough they overheard their son speaking to who he described as an imaginary friend late at night, and they heard a strange voice threaten to begin hurting Janine. Before long, Janine was being assaulted by the unseen presence, waking up to find bruises and scratches, and would often get pushed around by the demon in the middle of the day. She began noticing that the rosaries she hung were spinning in the house, plaster was falling from the ceiling and missing her by mere inches, and she began to seriously fear for her life. One day, her and her husband decided to leave out a tape recorder to see if they could get any proof of the demon occupying their house, and sure enough, when they went to check up on it the next day, they captured a growling sound and the demon saying, "She will die." But the last straw was when they moved a rug in one of the rooms, only to discover that the floor had been covered entirely in satanic symbols. This led them to believe that once upon a time the house had been used by a satanic cult that had likely brought the horrific demon that was taunting them into our world. Needless to say, they packed up everything and got the out of there. Next up at number 9 is Sarah Winchester's mansion. As the story goes, in 1881, Sarah lost her husband to tuberculosis, and in her grief sought out a spiritualist in hopes they could help her contact her husband to help her overcome this tragedy. But instead of getting the solace and closure she was looking for, she received an ominous warning that sent her off the deep end. You see, her late husband's family had created the notorious Winchester rifle that became known as the gun that won the West. What that meant was that thousands had died due to this creation of the gun, so when they reached her late husband in the beyond, he warned Sarah that all their lives' tragedies were a result of the blood money earned from the evil weapon. Next, he explained that spirits were coming after her with a vengeance and she needed to build a home for herself to protect against them. But there was one catch: she could never stop building. If she stopped construction, she would die. Sarah took this omen incredibly seriously and began construction on her property immediately, turning her house into a topsy-turvy maze-like mansion, believing it would confuse any spirits who tried to enter and torture her. There are staircases that lead to nowhere, trapdoors, skylights on the floor, doors that open to walls, and even a door that opens to a second-story drop. With all that, it's said that ghosts really did get trapped inside and now, unable to leave, get madder and madder with each passing day. Many have reported seeing apparitions, voices, and footsteps while visiting. Next up at number 8 is a demon mirror. It's not just homes that demons can allegedly occupy, but they're also a big fan of inanimate objects. In this case, a mirror. According to London roommates Joseph and Sotiris, they scored a free antique mirror from their landlord a few years ago. The friends were young and didn't have much money, so they were just happy to get a free piece of furniture. But after bringing it into their home, strange things started happening, and they soon discovered it had to be connected to the new mirror. The roommates began suffering intense and lucid nightmares and would wake up with brutal stabbing pains all over their body, along with scratch marks. Not only that, they would frequently wake up to find their entire house was practically turned upside down in a complete pigsty, almost as if they had been robbed. Soon enough, they were seeing shadowy figures lurking in the corners of their house and saw glimpses of darkness in the mirror, along with orbs of light appearing out of nowhere in the room. Eventually, they decided to get rid of the mirror and they landed on selling it on eBay with plenty of warning about what to expect. I have to say, I am worried for whoever bought it from them. If it were me, I would have just destroyed it. Next up at number 7 is a Ouija board. I don't know who decided to let Ouija boards become such an easily accessible item available to purchase at Walmart, because I don't think I have ever heard of it going well for anyone. One of these such stories is that of Tracy and Kieran Fry from South Wales. They became huge names in the British tabloids back in 2015 after they claimed that beginning on Halloween night, 3 incubus demons made their way into their home and began terrorizing them both physically and mentally every night for months. But they really got afraid after their son reported the demon visiting him, threatening to slit both Tracy and Kieran's throats in their sleep. And not long after that, they claimed to have witnessed the apparition in the light of day and even snapped a picture of the demon for the paper. The couple believed that the evil spirits managed to use their Ouija board as a vehicle to infest their home, which they had apparently used previously in an attempt to contact the dead. Eventually, the torture got so bad that they contacted a paranormal investigator as well as a vicar to try and rid the demons of their home, but allegedly only 2 of the entities were able to be squashed, and according to the couple, the demon never actually left and continues to haunt them to this day. Coming in at number 6 is Deanna Simpson. After years of being haunted by several demonic entities in her home, Deanna decided to reach out to reporters to share her story. Although the details have never been confirmed, Deanna claims that the origin of the demons in her home come from a series of gruesome deaths that occurred on the property, and she believes that the spirits are angry and unable to move on from their deaths. Eventually, things got so bad that in 2014, a film crew from Fox 43 arrived to see for themselves if the rumors were true, and what they saw changed their lives forever. As soon as they entered, they knew that Deanna had been telling the truth about the entities in her home. One of the cameramen, Nick Petrillo, said he felt burning all over his hands whenever he tried filming inside the house, and the only thing that made it go away was the holy water that Deanna poured over the area. While the crew was there, she went into more detail about her experience with the demons, explaining she believed it was multiple evil spirits haunting her, and that over the years they frequently tortured both her and her husband, physically and mentally, and she was beginning to lose hope about a better life. Deanna claims that she captured the shadowy figures on film, although this has never been confirmed. Still, the camera crew seemed to be quite on board with her experience. Coming in at number 5 is The Cage. During the witch trial era of Essex, this house was used as a prison for women accused of such sinful acts. During the 16th century, it housed 12 accused witches, one of which was the famous Ursula Kemp, who was tragically hanged for her so-called witchy ways. Whether that is all a coincidence or not is up for debate, but according to the 2004 owner, Vanessa Mitchell, it is a terrifying haunted home filled with deep-seated evil. The demons wasted no time introducing themselves to Vanessa. She claims that the first night in the house, she saw a shadowy figure in the corner and knew right away that something was very, very wrong. Shortly after, she began to feel harassed by the entity, as it would do things like push her when she was home alone, smack her hard enough to leave bruises, and even shoved Vanessa down the stairs. Not only that, she began seeing strange things. Blood stains started showing up on her floors all the time, and objects began launching themselves across the room. Whatever it was, it did not want her there. In an interview, she states that during her 3-year time living in the cage, she witnessed 4 ghosts, 2 men and 1 woman, as well as a horrifying goat demon, which she claims to have captured on camera. Thankfully, she got out alive, but the house remains a notorious spot in Essex, frequented by paranormal enthusiasts hoping to catch a glimpse of the evil entity that nearly killed Vanessa. Next up at number 4 is the Smurl House. Between the years of 1974 to 1989, the Smurl family was subjected to some incredibly terrifying hauntings in their Pennsylvania home. Over the 15 years they lived here, Jack and Janet Smurl, along with the rest of the family members, reported that their TV burst into flames, their toilets would flush themselves, and that various electronics would stop working for no reason at all. But it was at night that the family got truly terrified. They would hear the loud footsteps despite there never being an intruder, and a nauseating smell always filled the house, but only ever at night. Soon enough, things got even scarier. They began finding what appeared to be claw marks all over the bathroom, and then in 1985, a full-bodied apparition began haunting the halls and hovering over them while they were sleeping. The family named her Old Hag, and it seems that after a while the demon got bored of just watching the couple sleep, so it began harassing them, and according to Janet, would routinely commit SA on both her and her husband. That was the final straw for the couple, and so they decided to bring in a priest to exorcise the demon out, but even after 50 exorcisms, the entity refused to tighten its grip. So, fearing for their lives, the family finally moved out in 1989 and never looked back. Next Up at number 3 is LaToya Ammons. When LaToya Ammons moved into her quaint home in Gary, Indiana in 2011, she had no clue what was in store for her and her family. According to LaToya, things got bad quickly. The first troubling phenomenon occurred when a huge swarm of large black flies started circling the family's screened-in porch and only seemed to be multiplying. These flies were relentless, even staying through the winter, and as soon as they arrived, so did the sounds of strange footsteps at night. Then one day LaToya saw a shadowy figure walk across her living room and she began to panic. Something evil was in her home. It all came to a head after LaToya witnessed her unconscious 12-year-old levitating above her bed at 2 a.m. So she contacted some clairvoyants to try and rid whatever evil spirit was living in the home. According to the paranormal experts, LaToya's home was haunted by an astonishing 200 demons and was indeed a very dangerous place for her and her family to be living. LaToya decided the best course of action was to undergo exorcisms to rid themselves of anything the demons could have placed on them and flee their home. All I can say is thank God they got out alive. Coming in at number 2 is the Sallie House. Built in the 19th century, this haunted Kansas home is named after the ghost that is believed to roam its halls. The haunted house came into light back in 1992 when owners Tony and Deborah Pickman came forward saying that they began experiencing very strange things in their home after the birth of their daughter. What was once a completely normal home was suddenly infested by a demonic entity, covering the couple in scratch marks, cuts, and bruises nearly every day, and anyone else who visited the house received the same treatment. Soon, things only got worse. They were seeing full apparitions of the demons, watching objects float around their house, and hearing strange demonic noises at all hours of the day. It got so bad they contacted investigators who attempted to reach the spirits and reason with them, but the investigators were similarly tortured by whatever it was that was in their home. Eventually they came to realize that Sallie, the house's most active ghost, had died here when she was young from a botched appendectomy, and despite what they initially thought of her, she was not the demon herself. Instead, she had somehow become a magnet for dark entities to pass through, almost like a portal for demons to enter their house, and it was them who was making their lives a living hell. By 1994, they had enough and moved out of the horrible house, but have since maintained a website dedicated to their experience there. And last up in our number 1 spot today is Marie and Chris. Marie and Chris had a blended family, each with kids from previous marriages, and lived a very happy life. Until they decided to use a Ouija board to contact Chris's son from the dead. Quickly after beginning, they were contacted by an entity claiming to be Chris's son, but in fact, it was not his son, it was a demon masquerading as him. The demon called itself Frank and began detailing its desire to possess Julie, one of Mary's daughters who had cerebral palsy. This was enough for the couple to know that things were very wrong, and they quickly closed the board and ended the seance. But unbeknownst to them, they had opened a door they couldn't close. The family began being taunted by the entity Frank, and so Chris, thinking it would banish the spirit, decided to burn the Ouija board, but all it did was make Frank angrier and stronger. He began appearing in Mary's dreams, continuing to threaten the life of Julie, to the point where Mary was too afraid to even sleep, fearing it would only be the tortures of the demon all night. The family began seeing faces in the walls at night, waking up with scratches and bruises, and eventually decided to contact a professional. When the investigator arrived, he went to where the spirit was most active and sprinkled talc powder all over the floor there. To everyone's shock the next day, the name Julie had been scrawled into the powder on the floor. At that point, the family decided the only thing to do was to reach out to a Catholic priest for an exorcism. The priest eventually managed to banish Frank, but not before he possessed poor Julie for several hours. Moral of the story? Don't mess with Ouija boards.
Number 10. The Eden Brown Estate in the Caribbean. During a trip to St. Kitts, you can take a short ferry ride over to its sister island, Nevis, and visit a haunted former sugar plantation that now lies in ruins. The Eden Brown Estate was once owned by a wealthy businessman named John, who planned to gift the plantation to his daughter, Julia Huggins, and her fiance, Walter Maynard, after they married. However, both men died after feuding. It's presumed that the feud occurred during a fight over John's harsh treatment of his slaves. Walter's family was known to be much more lenient and gentle to their slaves. However, some believe that a slave mistress was the reason for their fight. Now, whatever the source of their feud, legend has it that Walter flung his drink into John's face and the two went to the courtyard to finish the duel. They both drew their pistols and shot one another. After the death of both men, the mansion was left to ruin and subjected to the ravages of time. It's said that Julia lost her mind after the incident and never married, living out the rest of her years in solitude. To this day, locals claim they can still feel her sad spirit roaming around the property, making it one of the most haunted places to visit in the Caribbean. Number 9. Malahide Castle, Ireland. Dublin, Ireland has a rich haunted history that spans back centuries. If you're looking to find some paranormal activity there, you can start by heading to Malahide Castle, one of Ireland's oldest castles and among the best medieval castles in Europe. It's said to be haunted by at least 5 ghosts. A mystery lady in white who has a painting of her wearing a white flowing dress in the Great Hall. No one knows who she is or how her portrait came to be at the Malahide Castle. Nonetheless, on many occasions, this young lady steps out of her portrait and wanders the castle halls. Another ghost, Puck, is the people's favorite ghost. Puck was a dwarf. In addition to being a jester, Puck was a watchman who lived in one of the towers. Most versions of his death say Puck was mysteriously stabbed on a snowy December night just outside the castle walls. He was wearing his jester suit, complete with cap and bells. Puck was found before he died, and with his dying breath he vowed to haunt Malahide Castle. Puck is now a mischievous spirit who enjoys photobombing. Number 8. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, USA. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is located in West Virginia and was constructed between 1858 and 1881. It was designed by the renowned architect Richard Andrews following the Kirkbride plan, which called for long rambling wings arranged with staggered formation, assuring that each of the connecting structures received an abundance of therapeutic sunlight and fresh air. The original hospital, designed to house 250 people, was opened to patients in 1864 and reached its peak in the 1950s with 2,400 patients in overcrowded and generally poor conditions. It closed in 1994 after 400 to 500 people died there. They performed over 4,000 lobotomies, which left some healthy patients with brain damage and hemorrhages. Legend says that you may see or hear one of the patients or see one of their common ghosts named Lily. She was one of the patients from the Civil War area that died from pneumonia at the age of 9. Witnesses say if you step in her playroom, you can hear her cries and laughs. There's also the ghost of Dean, the patient who met his unfortunate demise at the wrong end of a bed frame, and has been known to spend time in the room where he died. Port Arthur, Australia. There are many spooky tours around Port Arthur to satisfy worldly ghost hunters. The Tasmanian town is filled with reports of paranormal activity, which makes sense given its creepy past. The spot originally served as a penal colony in the 19th century, where prisoners were forced to endure solitary confinement and mandatory church services to correct bad behavior. Described as hell on earth, Port Arthur became a self-sufficient prison settlement where convicts worked in chain gangs producing clothing, furniture, and vegetables. Conservative estimates say that 1 in 4 Tasmanians, who number 4,700–500,000 of Australia's 19 million population, are descendants from the 12,000 men, women, and children who passed through Port Arthur between 1830 and 1877 as convicts from England. One tour here traces path through the church built by the convicts, the parson's house, doctor's office, and morgue hidden in the hills. Here, 5 or 6 century-old ghosts are said to reappear to tourists and locals alike, and some blurred specters captured on film are displayed for the skeptical. We've had people leave the tour before the first stop because it's freaked them out. Imagination is a wonderful thing, said a tour guide. Number 6. The Wall of Tears, Galapagos. While the Galapagos is known for its abundant flora and fauna, the eco-destination also has a spooky side with a dark history on one of its islands. Located in the town of Puerto Villamil on Isabel Island, the Wall of Tears is a 300-foot-long barrier made of volcanic rocks built over 14 years back in the 1940s and 50s. The establishment of a penal colony here was an easy choice for authorities, as they knew it was virtually impossible for anyone to escape the remote island. Now, back then, the small Galapagos Island housed several criminals who were forced to build this seemingly inturnable wall as part of their sentence. Out in the sweltering heat, they would collect the heavy, sharp lava rocks from around the island and place them along the wall. Some people say the wall was never finished, as it was meant to be a wall that would surround the actual prison area. But it's more likely that it was simply a make-work project as a punishment to those sent here. The torturous forced labor resulted in the deaths of many of these criminals, and locals say you can still hear their desperate cries at the unfinished wall from time to time. Number 5. Akershus Fortress, Norway. This medieval castle served as a defensive stronghold for the city of Oslo and is rumored to be the most haunted place in Norway. For many years, parts of the castle served as a prison for some of Norway's most notorious criminals. The sentence often involved grueling physical labor, and the prison was infamous for using irons, chains, and prisoner isolation as disciplinary techniques. It closed as a prison in 1950, but over the years there have been numerous reports of whispers and scratching along the fortress halls, and many guards have reported weird experiences, like the sensation of being pushed while alone on duty. Many visitors and employees claim to have experienced something that they cannot declare. Most of the paranormal occurrences are the common phenomena: people hear footsteps, disembodied voices, and smell strange smells. But there are some claims that have been around for centuries. The most popular sightings including a demon dog named Malkazian, I hope I said that right, who is said to guard the gates of the castle. But if you are bitten by this dog, you are bound to die within 3 months, and of course in a very unhappy and painful way. And for decades, people have claimed to see a woman appear from the darkness wearing a long dark cloak who has no face. Number 4. The Paris Catacombs, France. Oh, the French. If you're in the mood for a little darkness while visiting Paris, ditch that tour of the Eiffel Tower and go see the famous Paris Catacombs. What are the catacombs, you ask? It's a place where skulls and bones line the walls of century-old tunnels. With around 6 million corpses buried inside, there are plenty of urban legends and ghost stories lurking in the skeletal maze. These include a group of explorers finding a video camera left on the ground in the early 1990s. From the video, they could tell the man holding the camera was lost and had no idea how to escape, and the man was going mad in the underground network of tunnels. To this day, no one knows who he was or if he ever managed to get out alive. Also, you can't be there after midnight because that's when the walls begin to speak. It's said disembodied voices will try to persuade you to venture even deeper into the catacombs until you can't find your way out again. The catacombs span almost 200 miles long, but only a mile of the tunnels is open to the public. And yet, that hasn't stopped others from trying to enter closed-off areas of the catacombs, though it's through its many secret entrances hidden around Paris. Number 3. Ancient Ram Inn, England. The Ancient Ram Inn, found in Wanton-under-Edge, England, is a 12th century inn and one of the oldest in the Western world. It's believed to have once been a pagan burial ground and is now haunted by more than 20 spirits. Perhaps the most famous is a witch that was burned at the stake in the area during the 1500s at the height of witch hunting. The woman fled from potential trial by government-sanctioned witch hunters and took refuge in the Ancient Ram Inn. She was soon captured, though, and burned at the stake. The room where she hid has been dubbed the Witch's Room, and her spirit is believed to be haunting it to this day. There are also stories of spirits of ritually murdered people, exorcisms, and other dark hauntings that took place. Orbs of these spirits have been photographed, and the place has been investigated by many paranormal researchers, particularly for television shows like Ghost Adventures and Most Haunted. Number 2. Fairmont Banff Springs, Canada. Ever since it was complete in 1888, this hotel has been associated with paranormal activity. One of the most famous legends is of the ghost bride who on her wedding day, decked out in her wedding gown, descended one of the hotel's marble staircases. Something startled her, causing her to slip and fall, and she died on those steps. Since then, hotel staff and guests alike have reported seeing a veiled figure moving up and down the stairs, or seeing a figure in a wedding dress dancing in the ballroom upstairs, pining for the first dance with her husband she never had. Stories of Sam Macaulay, a genial old Scotsman who was a head bellman during the 60s and 70s, has been circulating around the hotel since his passing in 1975. Supposedly, Sam is a helpful sort of spirit, and most stories involving him mention some service he provided to staff or guests. There are also haunted rooms, as guests have reported having their pillows yanked out from under their heads while they slept, or even being pushed off the bed by some unseen entity. In another room, an entire family was murdered there, and ever since, guests in the room have reported being awakened by screaming, and when they turned the lights on, they would see bloody handprints on the mirror. And coming in at number 1, the Old Vicarage, Sweden. Borgmanet is a small village in northern Sweden. It only has 50 residents, a church, and a vicarage. That old vicarage is extremely haunted, perhaps the most haunted place in Sweden. In 1930, the owner saw a lady dressed in grey at the house. She was walking slowly towards him through the big hall, but decided to take a turn at the expedition room, the office where the vicars used to work. He wanted to talk to her, ask her what she was doing inside his house, but when he got to the exhibition room, there was no one there. Next, a couple moved in 1936, and they heard footsteps walking through the house, and doors were opening and closing as if someone was moving from one room to another. When they wanted to welcome the visitor, they saw nobody. Then the wife was home alone one day when she heard music coming from behind the closed door. She opened the kitchen door and the music suddenly stopped. This happened again later when her husband was back home. Then, in 1945, another man moved in and he brought a rocking chair. One night, when he was reading a book in it, he was pushed out of the chair so violently that he fell to the ground. When he tried again, it was as if he was blocked from it and he fell again. The rocking chair also started moving on its own. Now, each room here has its own little story, with guests reporting seeing shadows, hearing furniture move, and much more.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Koh Lip Island. I'll be honest, this is a place that, despite the spooky tales, is probably still on many people's travel destinations list because it is so beautiful. Like much of Thailand, it truly is seemingly idyllic. When it comes to the haunting scene here, we turn to those who inhabit the island, the Chao Lei people. They claim to share their island with the whole host of spirits that they call the Ha Tao. You would think that a ghost-filled island would keep people away, but they've found their own way to keep these spirits appeased, and that is by offering them strawberry pop and cupcakes. I mean, apparently it pays to be a spirit. Sounds pretty awesome. You get to chill on an island and you get poppin' cupcakes. Despite the incredible scenery and the amazing hospitality of those who are local to the island, many people report feeling some sort of uneasy presence on Koh Lip Island.
Number 9. Wat Sin Suk Hell Garden. Gardens are supposed to be peaceful. It's supposed to be a place to grow, reflect, swat bees for hours on end, all that good stuff. But when it comes to the Wat Sin Suk Hell Garden, you won't be finding any peace whatsoever. This one's a little odd, a little spooky. Thailand is very spiritual, and this specific garden is home to hundreds of sculptures, each depicting the horrors that are awaiting in Buddhist hell. Yeah, they're very scary to look at. Unlike other gardens in Thailand, this one was built quite recently, believe it or not. The Hell Garden was built in 1986. Now, the idea is to keep you from committing any sins, and I gotta admit, they nailed it. Yeah, pretty much did the best they could. Olivia and I like to walk through graveyards for fun sometimes, so I don't know. I personally would love to walk through this. Would you do it?
In our number 8 spot today, we have Mae Ram Phung Beach. For this one, we are taking a trip to the eastern coast of Thailand to the Rayong province. Here lies this beach, which attracts tourists from all over the world. Earlier this year, the shores of this beach were actually hit with the results of an oil spill, but that isn't the most frightening thing that's happened here. Apparently, this area saw a few people who lost their lives in the water, and these horrible incidents happened quite close together. Since then, people have reported a sort of uneasy feeling as they visited the beach, and some have even claimed to have left feeling haunted and have not been able to shake the feeling.
Number 7. Koh Kam Noi Ghost Island. Love the name, Ghost Island. Really gets to the point. for this next one here. I like it. Ghost Island, Koh Kam Noi, is located in the eastern Gulf of Thailand. Now, it's close to the Konburi province. There is a plethora of reasons why this island is for sure haunted. Let's list them. During World War II, American soldiers constructed a base on the island. The deep waters surrounding the islands made it a pretty ideal stop for large warships. Now, unfortunately, there were swarms of mosquitoes that were also sharing the same island, so a great amount of those soldiers died and had to be buried on Koh Nam Noi Island. Now, today there's a Muslim cemetery on the one side and a Chinese cemetery on the other. All things considered, I couldn't imagine a more peaceful resting place.
In our number 6 spot today, we have Ayutthaya, a historical park. This national park is a place with incredibly rich history, and it is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The site was founded in 1350 and it became the second capital of Siam after Sukhothai. The site ended up being destroyed by the Burmese in the 18th century, but despite these ruins, even today you can still get the sense of how wonderful this place once was. With history like this, it's definitely no surprise that this place is said to be haunted. The most popular haunting story from this location is in regards to the ghost of Pu Sam Phao Sap, who is said to guard the city's treasures. Even Prince Bira of Siam reported seeing this ghostly apparition, and not many people can say that they have a royal backing them up when it comes to their paranormal claims.
Number 5. River Kwai Bridge. I don't like bridges in general. I have no idea how they work structurally. It freaks me out when I look at them and to think about them. When it comes to Hellfire Pass, no chance, not gonna do that one. First of all, big fan of the name. These are all scary names. They hint towards the impending doom. I kinda like it. The River Kwai Bridge saw brutal combat during World War II, but the Death Railway alias actually comes from the dark history during the initial construction of the River Kwai Bridge, where a countless number of prisoners or tradesmen all lost their lives while laying the 260-mile long track. The track runs from Thailand to Burma, and almost all of it is deemed haunted. So yeah, big note from me. Hard pass on this pass.
In our number 4 spot today, we have Tui Watana Deserted House. If you've seen Final Destination, the vibes that this spooky abandoned house is giving will definitely be a little familiar. Legend goes that a group of friends entered this house once to have a little fun in a place they probably shouldn't have been. You know, young people, everyone did stupid stuff, but it turns out there might be a higher price to pay when it comes to this place. Since then, it is said that this group of friends has seen members of the group dying in some strange or very elaborate circumstances. One passed away in a car accident, the other in a house fire. It is said that the remaining members of the group believes that they may have been the target of a vengeful spirit that was angry that they entered that house. I hope they all stay far away from roller coasters and tanning beds for sure, and maybe just don't drive behind any trucks carrying wood, just to be safe.
Number 3. The Sathorn Unique. Commonly referred to as, you guessed it, Ghost Tower, the Sathorn Unique is a colossal unfinished skyscraper, and it's gonna stay that way for probably ever. Upon first glance, this looks like any city, right? Cranes sticking out of the building, there's scaffolding just waving like a flag in the wind, it's the usual. Now, not all these construction zones, however, have this many reports of paranormal activity. This building looks massive. You stare up from the streets of downtown Bangkok and you get the chills. Even though construction began in the 90s, the building still has not been completed post-financial crisis. Now, one major incident that deems the Sathorn Unique as haunted took place in December 2014. A photographer snuck into the building to take photos of the sunrise, but instead found the body of a Swedish man on the 43rd floor. It was determined that the man had sadly taken his own life.
In our number 2 spot today, we have the Bayok Sky Hotel. The haunting tales of this location can be attributed to the significant number of workforce deaths that have been reported here. During the construction of this luxury hotel, it is said that 3 of the workers fell to their rather untimely deaths. Now, this sky-high tower is said to be haunted by the souls of those who fell. Both staff of the hotel as well as guests staying there have reported seeing things like shadows lurking through the hallways. It doesn't stop here, however. Some guests have even reported their items being moved seemingly on their own, and there's also been reports of just a general feeling of uneasiness, a feeling like they're being watched. It truly gives me shivers just thinking about it, but I'm sure stories like this only make this hotel more desirable for those interested in all things paranormal.
And finally, number 1, Bangpyu Shoe Factory. We'll finish this list off with an abandoned shoe factory located in Samut Prakan. The factory suffered this freak accident that sadly led to many casualties of workers. The air compressor malfunctioned in some way and ultimately it erupted. It was quite fast and very tragic, but the factory owner continued business afterwards Anyways, now after that point, workers one by one ended up leaving. They were quitting their jobs on the spot, all claiming to have encountered the spirits of the previous workers who had lost their lives. Now word spread quite fast, so business slowed down drastically. The owner as well sadly took their own life in the same factory. So it's no surprise that the building remains untouched still to this day.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Fairmont Banff Spring Hotel. This Canadian hotel is absolutely legendary, but despite the spooky tales, tourism remains as high as ever. This hotel was built in 1888 in order to encourage tourists and to sell train tickets, and while it certainly did just that, this chateau-style hotel was only the icing on the cake to a trip to the gorgeous Rocky Mountains and all that waits in the Banff National Park. Through the years, though, several guests have had some haunting stories to tell, which included reports of ghost sightings. These ghosts are thought to reside in the hotel, and they include a bride who allegedly fell down the stone staircase during her wedding, which led to her untimely departure, or the legend of Sam the Bellman. This legend has it that Sam worked at the hotel until 1975, and before leaving, he claimed that he would come back to haunt the hotel. It is said that his spirit can be seen in the hotel, helping people with their bags. In our number 9 spot today, we have Zunantunich. This location sits deep in the jungles of Belize, located less than a mile from the border of Guatemala. It has an unbelievably rich history, as it is an ancient Maya ruin that has been abandoned for the last 1,000 years. In 1890, this site had its modern discovery, and since then it has been an important site for archaeology, an amazing tourist attraction, but also it is said to be a hotspot for the paranormal. It is said that the site is haunted by a female ghost. She has black hair and glowing red eyes. Referred to as the Stone Lady, it is said that she was first spotted by one of the first research teams in the area in 1893, and since then she has been frequently seen by the tallest building complex called El Castillo. No one exactly knows the story behind the Stone Lady considering the history of this site, but many believe she may have been a part of a ritual sacrifice, which was a tradition and spiritual practice done by the ancient Maya civilization. In our number 8 spot today, we have Burg Eltz. This German castle dates back to 1157, so it's no surprise that there are many myths and legends surrounding it. The most common tale is that of a young countess named Agnes. Agnes was betrothed or promised to another noble, but after meeting him, she called off their future wedding. Apparently this guy was the worst, and also even if he wasn't, no one could really blame her for calling off a wedding she didn't want to have. But of course, things quickly went awry. This noble guy was mad that she had rejected him, so the scorned lover laid siege to the castle. Agnes fought to defend her home, but she passed away during the battle. That is the story behind why her spirit is said to haunt the Burg Eltz castle. Many say the strongest presence is felt in her former bedroom. It is said that her spirit is quite mournful, and apparently her battle armor and axe remain on display as well. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Eden Brown Estate. This estate is located in Nevis, which is the smaller of the two islands that comprise the nation of St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean. It is said that despite having just as much to offer, Nevis is often overshadowed by St. Kitts. That is, until people hear of this ghostly haunting. Eden Brown Estate is a former plantation that now lies in ruin. The estate was once owned by a businessman who was going to give the property to his daughter as a wedding present. Legend goes that on the wedding day there was a very mysterious duel between the groom and his best man that ended up leaving both of the men dead. Because of this tragic happening on what should have been her wedding day, the businessman's daughter remained unmarried and alone for the rest of her life, which meant that when she passed, there was no one to leave the estate to. Now visitors of the estate report seeing the spirit of a reclusive woman as she roams about the grounds. Aside from this story, who knows what other kind of horrors and absolute tragedies that this place has seen. In our number 6 spot today, we have Bangar Fort. Bangar Fort is located in India, just 100 miles southwest of Delhi. This place is pretty much completely abandoned, as it is said to have had a curse placed on it. Apparently many years ago, a sorcerer tried to woo a local princess, in which she rejected him. He got so upset that he decided that cursing this town was his only course of action. I just have to mention that none of these are a normal reaction to being rejected, and calling it an overreaction would honestly be an understatement. This fort now is closed to visitors after sundown because of all the spooky happenings that go on here. This fort is extremely beautiful, so it's no wonder the paranormal doesn't keep people out. People have reported having extremely strong feelings of an otherworldly presence, and even some have reported hearing voices that are seemingly coming from nowhere. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Whaley House. The Whaley House is located in San Diego and it was built in 1857. The site that this family house was built on was actually the location of San Diego's first public gallows, so as you can imagine, that's a pretty good backstory for a haunted site. Right after moving in, Thomas Whaley reported that he could hear the footsteps of Yankee Jim Robinson, who had been hanged at the gallows just 4 short years before the house was built. After moving in, the Whaley family began to experience a bunch of family tragedies, many of which actually happened inside of the house. The Whaley House is now a museum, and apparently the family members continue to haunt the site. These paranormal occurrences are apparently often accompanied by the smells of cigar smoke and heavy perfumes. In our number 4 spot today, we have Obvodny Canal. Obvodny Canal is located in St. Petersburg, Russia, and this whole thing just really creeps me out. This man-made canal was built in the late 18th century, and ever since then there has been extremely strange occurrences at this location. Construction workers would complain of headaches. They would also sometimes even have random outbursts of violent behavior that was uncharacteristic of them, but the craziest, most unsettling part is what has given this location full cursed status. Many of these people have attempted to take their own lives. Sadly, most of the attempts were successful, but the few people who have been saved have explained that they have no idea why they did it. They say that they didn't really have intentions beforehand, and some have even said that they felt some sort of invisible force pulling them into the water. Apparently there are some sinister souls that live beneath the surface of the water, and there have even been reports of seeing a lady in white in the water before she suddenly disappears. Long story short, remind me to just never ever go here. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Eastern State Penitentiary. The Eastern State Penitentiary is located in Philadelphia, and of course it used to be a prison, but it is now an abandoned and extremely haunted house. This prison used to house some pretty big profile prisoners such as Al Capone and Willie Sutton, but it was different from the American prisons we are used to now. This is because this prison was entirely separate incarceration. The inmates would live, sleep, eat, and everything else alone. When they were removed from their cells, they would have hoods placed over their heads as well. Considering all we now know about how detrimental isolation is, this of course must have taken an immense toll on the prisoners. Beside this, there were also some pretty gruesome and horrible punishments in this prison, such as having prisoners' tongues chained to their wrists. I'm honestly not even sure how you would do that, but apparently it was a thing. This prison now sees thousands of voluntary visitors every year, and there have been plenty of reports of some creepy paranormal happenings. These reports include seeing shadowy figures, hearing creepy laughter that doesn't belong to anyone living, and hearing footsteps throughout the prison. I feel like considering all that went on when this prison was active, it truly does make sense that this building would be a haunted one. In our number 2 spot today, we have Raynham Hall. Raynham Hall is located in England and was built around 1620, and it is a large building on 7,000 acres, which is obviously quite impressive. The tale that follows this haunted building is that of Lady Dorothy Dolly Townsend and her husband Viscount Turnip Townsend. I can't believe a couple with the nicknames Dolly and Turnip have an evil history, but unfortunately, they do. The story goes that Turnip kept Dolly locked up in the house, which is obviously just terrible and very cruel. After her passing, it's no wonder she decided to stick around and haunt the house. Apparently, there was a photo taken of her ghost in 1930, and it is said that no one has ever been able to prove it was a fake, so all you photo experts out there, take a look and let me know what you think. A lot of the places on this list now serve as haunted houses, but apparently this one is still lived in by the Raynham family. Hence the name. In our number 1 spot today, we have Forsyth Park. One thing I didn't know is that apparently the entire city of Savannah, Georgia is a pretty haunted place due to the creepy tunnels that are located underneath the city. But one of the most notable, highly haunted places within the city is Forsyth Park. Apparently there used to be a hospital across the street, and there would be autopsies performed in the tunnels below the park. I personally feel like autopsies are already creepy enough, so I'm not sure if conducting them in an underground tunnel was exceptionally necessary, but hey, I can't change the past. Because of this scary practice, the park has seen a lot of paranormal activity since these days, and it usually is the sort of place where 1 second you'll see a strange figure, but as soon as you blink or look away, it disappears just as quickly as it suddenly appeared.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Tower of London. Ah, the Tower of London, the scene of much betrayal and bloodshed. There aren't enough hours in the day to list the amount of ghosts said to haunt this royal fortress on the banks of the River Thames. The tower has been the prison and death spot of some of the most famous people in British history, including Henry VIII's wife Anne Boleyn. She is said to haunt the tower to this day. Also, haunting the tower are 2 young princes who were killed on the orders of Richard III. The 2 youngsters appear most frequently to other children who visit the tower on school trips. The most dramatic ghost of the Tower of London, though, is the ghost of the Countess of Salisbury. Now, she had a very grisly death there indeed. She broke free of her executioner, who instead of chopping off her head, hacked her up with an axe. She can be heard screaming and running riot in the castle's grounds. One tourist had a turn when she was on a guided tour of the tower. In one of the rooms used to imprison the former enemies of the crown, she simply had a breakdown. She started screaming, "There's so much suffering." Apparently the suffering can still be felt in the grounds today. On top of the human spectres, the tower is also said to be haunted by the ghost of a bear. A bear! Coming in at number 9, we have Screaming Montebello Castle. Montebello Castle is located in Switzerland near the border with Italy. Look at it, it is absolutely stunning. This castle was built in the 14th century, so it's had 6 centuries of history. The most enduring tale from the castle is the story of Gwendolina, an albino girl who lived in the castle and was kept there. Being an albino was socially scorned back in those days, and her mother tried to dye her hair with natural herbs to try and give it some colour, but it ended up turning blue, which earned her the nickname of Azarina. She was forbidden to leave the castle, and her father was ashamed of her. One day, under very mysterious circumstances, the girl was killed. Stories do vary as to exactly how, but they all involve her letting out a string of blood-curdling screams. Azarina died on the 21st of June 1375, but her screams can still be heard in the castle today, and are loudest during the summer solstice, the anniversary of her death. Coming in at number 8, we have Himeji Castle in Japan. Himeji Castle was built in the 1300s in a hilltop in the Hygo Prefect. Now, the beautiful castle is home to a dark legend and a wronged ghostly presence. The story goes that once a servant by the name of Okiku was accused of losing valuable crockery, and the loss of the dishes seemed to be reason enough for her to take her life. Okiku was dragged from the kitchen and thrown into a well in the castle grounds, where she died. It is said that her ghost still haunts the castle today. She is said to haunt both the grounds and the kitchen. She can be heard counting dishes while sobbing, and then when she gets to 9, she runs shrieking and shrieking back into the well. Coming in at number 7, we have the ghost of Tuileries Palace. There is a ghost of a red man spotted outside Tuileries Palace in Paris. Now, he was said to be a local butcher. Others say he was a henchman of the 16th century Queen Catherine de Medici. Both legends agree that his name was Jean and that the Queen had him killed because he held way too many secrets. A while after his death, a man was spotted in blood-red attire wandering the gardens. One man who spoke to his ghost, Neuville, reported that Jean swore vengeance to the Queen and the crown, and the Kingdom of France. Aristocrats of the palace thought that he was a sign of bad luck to come. Indeed, Marie Antoinette supposedly saw his ghost shortly before meeting the guillotine herself. Napoleon, it was said, quite liked him and would talk to him about war strategy. Of course. Those visiting the old palace today occasionally do spot the man in red, which is a bad thing indeed because it's supposed to be that, he's a sign of bad things to come. Coming into number 6, we have the Witches of Musham Castle. Unternberg, Austria held its own gruesome witch trials between 1675 and 1690. These were the Zuberjackel trials, during which 139 people were killed. Now, strangely for witch trials, most of those killed were men, 113 men to be be precise. Those killed on suspicion of witchcraft were tortured first, and then afterwards they were burned alive or hung or decapitated. As you can imagine, as the scene of hundreds of brutal and unjust murders, the building carries a certain tension. And you can feel that tension even if you don't believe in ghosts, but if you do, it is thought that the spirits of the wronged plague the castle, crying and shrieking at night. One of the murdered was a 10-year-old orphan who was killed simply for being homeless. His cries are said to be the loudest. Beyond the story of the witch trials, there is a tale of werewolves in the palace. Now these stem back to the 1800s. Back then, deer and cattle began showing up dead around the grounds. Suspected werewolves were taken to the dungeon and killed. Some say they hear the growls of torture victims emanating from the dungeons at night even today. Coming in at number 5, we have Frankenstein's castle. You may recognize the name Frankenstein. Well, it is thought that this castle inspired Mary Shelley's famous novel of the same name. The castle is in the Darmstadt district of Germany in the Hesse region. The 13th century castle is thought to be haunted by the ghost of Johann Conrad Dippel, a bad man. Dippel was a physician and alchemist who wanted to resurrect the dead. He would rob graves by night and then cut up the bodies and use them in his elixirs and potions. It seems that he wanted to find a potion to resurrect the dead and also to generate immortality. In the end, drinking one of his concoctions actually killed him. It is thought that his spirits haunt the Frankenstein castle today, and so too do the many spirits of his unearthed experiments. He is most frequently spotted between Christmas and New Year sitting on the chapel roof. Coming in at number 4, we have the hellish Hoska Castle in the Czech Republic. Hoska Castle is a Gothic fort in the middle of nowhere, and it is said that even to this day, animals stay away from the castle walls. They prefer to be out in the wild rather than take shelter in the structure. In folklore, the castle is known as the gateway to hell. Legend has it that demons and dragons have been spotted pouring forth from the castle's vile mouth. Indeed, some even say that they've seen ghouls there today. To make matters worse, the castle was taken over by the Nazis during World War II. It is said that they tortured hundreds of people there, as well as conducting some really inhumane medical tests. Some think that the Nazis were drawn to the building as it was so hellish, others say it was simply a coincidence. Most do agree, however, that the property is haunted and only a few brave souls will step inside. Those that have claim that they have constantly felt like they're being watched. Coming in at number 3, we have Dracula's castle. Dracula. No. So Bran's castle, better known as Dracula's castle, is a stately 13th century castle linked to the dark legend of Dracula because of its Transylvania location, or modern day Romania. The famous literary vampire aside, the castle was once home to the extra ghoulish Vlad the Impaler, thought to be one of the worst and most evil tyrants to ever live. Vlad the Impaler was alive until 1477, and in his 50-ish years on Earth, he caused literal hell. Many suspected that he himself was a vampire because of the ghoulish way that he would kill people. It is a popular legend that the vampire, or indeed the ghost of Vlad, haunt the castle today. Honestly, how terrifying. Coming in at number 2, we have Fyvie Castle in Scotland. I love Scotland. You will find plenty of ghost stories in Scotland, especially in Scottish castles. A little north of Aberdeen, you will find the breathtaking Fyvie Castle. Fyvie is haunted by the ghost of poor Lilias Drummond, who died of both an empty stomach and an empty heart. It seems that she had an abusive husband who would beat her, and in the end it is said that he locked her in a room and starved her to death in 1601. It seems that Lilias's ghost has haunted the castle ever since, and strangely appears as a green spectre. The night her husband took a new wife, she carved her name in the stone wall of her husband's bedchamber. Apparently this carving can still be seen there today. It seems that her spirit shows up when bad things are about to happen to the castle's owners or to the area surrounding the castle. Now, aside from her mournful spirit, it is also said that the castle is haunted by a trumpeter whose instrument can be heard when death is nearby. Usually I'm like, bring on the trumpets, but not when they signal death. Finally, coming into number 1 of the scariest, most haunted castles in the world, we have Leap Castle in Ireland. Leap Castle is often hailed as one of the most haunted castles in the entire world. The castle encounters County Arthelay dates back to the 1200s and today is in partial ruin. The castle was owned by the O'Carrolls clan, but it was under constant siege. On one occasion, a priest was killed in a brawl between warring clans. Now sadly, his death took place in what is now known as the Bloody Chapel. The priest is said to haunt the chapel today and is pretty unhappy about his death, which, you know, fair. The story of the priest is one of the more notable deaths, but plenty of blood has been shed in the castle at the hands of the attackers and the O'Carrolls. The O'Carrolls were said to have been brutish back in the day, and they were thought to have captured and raped a woman who fell pregnant. When the woman birthed her child, unfortunately, the infant was killed by her captors. It is said that now her angry spirit haunts the castle, wielding a knife ready to stab in a fit of revenge. The worst spirit of all, though, is the spirit of something that locals call it. It is around the size of a sheep and is an unidentified animal, and it has a decaying face. Before you even see it, you will smell it. It comes with a waft of rotting flesh and sulfur, which, ugh. Ghosts, one thing. Ghosts that smell, a whole different ballgame. Okay, coming in at number 10 of the scary haunted Airbnbs, we have Laura's Cottage. Ooh, a haunted cottage, very spooky. So who is Laura and who is haunting her cottage? Well, it seems that Laura's cottage in Savannah is haunted by none other than Laura herself. Laura lived in the cabin, which dates back to 1799. Now, she lived there for 50 years, according to the Airbnb lister. If you want to know what Laura looks like, there is a picture of her on the mantelpiece. She looks like a lovely lady who I would very much enjoy having met before she died anyway. Meeting her as a ghost? I'm not so sure. It seems that guests at the cabin have come across Laura a number of times. One guest wrote that Laura visited on 3 occasions. They said that Laura made herself known to us on 3 visits. The first was by opening a downstairs window from the bottom up on one chilly morning. The window was locked. Soon after, she flickered the lights over the dining table and the bulbs were in nice and tight. They then said, on the coldest night of the year, you could smell wood smouldering like a campfire after water had been poured on it. It was on and off, but so strong that we checked the cottage. Laura was telling us that we should keep warm. They said that they never saw or heard her, but they knew that she was there. For me, it sounds like Laura's very much a friendly ghost. Coming in at number 9, we have the Parks Bowman Mansion. I would love to go to New Orleans, and so I wouldn't even mind staying in this haunted mansion because I'd get to be there. That being said, it does freak me out. This is a 130-year-old mansion called the Parks Bowman Mansion. Ghosts are one thing, but little girl ghosts are the scariest. The owner of this otherwise lovely looking property, filmmaker Adrian Parks Bowman, says that the ghost is friendly if a little shy. The listing reads that she's a young girl in a yellow dress from the 1890s. The girl is thought to be one of the beloved 7 daughters from the home's 19th century owners. The ghost seems to exclusively haunt one bedroom. One guest said that they heard tiny footsteps dancing around the bed one evening. They said it sounded like a young person who had on a long skirt. They said they could hear what sounded like taffeta rustling on the ground. The ghost is benevolent, it seems. Adrian said that one guest experienced someone giving him mouth to mouth after a bad dream. Coming in at number 8, we have the Highlands Mansion. Don't we all love a bit of the Rocky Mountains? Beautiful. I would love to stay in a mansion there and just enjoy the atmosphere of this historic part of Denver near the Rockies. But wait, there might actually be more atmosphere here than bargained for. Unfortunately, the home was the scene of a nasty crime. In October 1970, 2 girls were victims of murder in that very house. 17-year-old Carla Lee Noche and her friend Marianne Weaver were murdered at the property. This was in the 2nd floor apartment that now is available on Airbnb. Now, the listing even contains a newspaper cutting of the incident from the Rocky Mountains news publication. It seems the ghosts aren't too active these days though. The main thing guests seem to have focused on is the jacuzzi in the bedroom, which is, you know, always nice. Coming in at number 7, we have the Rustic Carriage House. Came alone but woke up with someone or something else sleeping next to you? Sure, you may have had too many pints at ye olde local inn, or you might be experiencing one of the Rustic Carriage House's frequent hauntings. The house is located in Charleston and dates back to 1843, although the history of the area goes back a lot further. In one of the grand house's room 8 as it's known, there is said to be a headless ghost that haunts the space. One self-confessed skeptic says that he woke up one night in 1993 to see a headless torso in bed with him. When he moved, he says that the ghost growled at him. Those who rent the room suspect that the headless ghost was a Civil War soldier teenager who met the wrong end of a gun in the area. Another ghost haunts room 10 and is another spectral bedfellow. Blimey. The ghost of room 10 is supposed to be a rather forward gentleman who likes to climb in bed with women. The ghost has garnered the nickname the Gentleman's Ghost. Now, while I wouldn't say that climbing into bed with unknown women is very gentlemanly, apparently Chappy Boy disappears through what was once a door in the room when a lady wakes and protests. Protest is just a nicer word for screams, right? If I woke up and saw a ghost in my bed, I would be screaming. So yeah, ladies who are lonesome or people that like headless soldiers, the rustic carriage house is for you. Coming in at number 6, we have Captain Grant's home. I love a good captain. So for around $180 a night, you can stay in ye olde building dating back to 1754. Captain Grant's is located in the historic area of the Connecticut Mystic Coast and Country. Of course, a building that is that old is bound to have seen some action over its years. Apparently, the Adelaide room is the most haunted. A review of the property said that the historic inn is also home to a sweet black cat called Molly that keeps the spirits happy when no one's staying there. Is it the house that's haunted, or are the spirits drifting in from 2 nearby cemeteries? Who knows? One guest even wrote that they put out children's toys in their room for the children ghosts to play with. That's very thoughtful, but also very, very creepy. Coming into number 5, we have the Taliston Estate. Okay, this room could not look any more haunted if it tried. The listing says that the room is decorated in Scottish Art Nouveau style and recreates in nightmarish detail the bedchamber of a 7-year-old Edwardian child. The listing says it comes complete with books, toys, and ephemera. There's even a crucifix above the bed, which really freaks me out. Why? Why? It may boast the looks, but does this room come packing the spirit? And the answer is maybe. The room certainly looks like the spookiest around, but it may not actually be boasting a ghost. The home is an ex-council house in Dunmow, Essex, and has been renovated to astonishing detail. The bedroom matches a Scottish Edwardian dining hall downstairs, but the home also has a Cambodian treehouse room, a Moorish bedroom, a 1915s New Orleans kitchen, and much more. It certainly looks spooky, and with the amount of money homeowner John has spent on transforming the property, I can only imagine he could manufacture a simulated ghost to add a bit of an atmosphere. Okay, so this is my favourite on the list, and I'd love to stay here. We have the Talinga Ghost Town. I love the look of this property. For me, this would feel like sleeping on a film set, but actually, it is the ruin of a genuine ghost town. That's even cooler, but kind of scary. The ghost town of Terralinga is an old mining district in Texas on the border between the USA and Mexico. The house is a stacked limestone cabin, and the porch offers incredible views of mountains and the Badlands. The property is very remote and doesn't have any internet, which makes it even scarier for the modern day traveler. There are for sure going to be some ghosts of old miners clanging around the abandoned mines at night, peeping in windows trying to get home. I think it would be incredible to spend the night here, but you would need your wits about you for sure. Okay, I don't like the sound of this name at all. Coming into number 3, we have the Madness Chamber. We have a lot of ghosts knocking around the British Isles, especially in places like York, a walled city in the north of England that dates back to ancient Roman times. That city has seen it all and was instrumental throughout the Tudor era. This property dates back 600 years to a more bloodthirsty era and has a room called the Madness Chamber. Would you want to stay in the Madness Chamber? I'm really not sure that I would. The owners say that they've had people walk into their property, which costs £120 a night, and they've straight up said they don't like the energy and they've turned around and left. According to news coverage, the property is the most haunted in the UK. There's even a beware of the ghost sign above the fireplace, as well as a legit ghost detector in the building. Apparently the ghost of the Madness Chamber has long dark hair and wears a cap. He also seems to like peering over shoulders. I have to say that the creepiest thing for me about the Madness Chamber is the taxidermy bats. Like, keep those away from me, please. We have some good old-fashioned heartbreak at number 2. This is Castello del Pazzo. This incredible 8-bedroom property comes with a pretty hefty price tag. For over $4,000 a night, guests can stay in the Italian Castello perched on a hill. The property is romantically gothic, the kind of place you can imagine Dracula drawing you into his thrall and biting you. The ghost that stalks the beautiful grounds is called the Lady in Waiting and is indeed said to have been broken-hearted. The girl was thought to have been called Barbara, and she supposedly died of a broken heart in 1467 when she waited for her love to return to her. Unfortunately, he never did, and it is said that at night it is still possible to hear her sighs and wails of heartbroken despair coming from the tower. Okay, we're at number 1, and there is uncontrollable screaming and dead children ghosts, which for me isn't great. We have the Grand Midway Hotel. The derelict Grand Midway Hotel in Pittsburgh was bought for just $11,000 in 2001. Since then, owner Blair Murphy has been working to restore the 130-year-old haunted building, and now 2 of its rooms have been listed on Airbnb, the Traveler's Suite and the reassuringly named Vampire Suite. Speaking of the ghostly activity, Murphy said, "For years this place had creepy stuff. Not like terrifying, but just like weird stuff. You could be in a room and say something might happen, like something falls over and it seems like it's answering you." Murphy said one of the ghosts is called Squidlana and likes to pinch people. One guest was so scared of the ghostly activity, the police were called. The guest reportedly would not stop screaming. Murphy said the screaming went on and on, so everyone ran upstairs to the 3rd floor, and she was on the floor. She just lost all control of her body and she was out of it screaming. She said later that she had touched the lamp and she had zapped her finger. Then she turned and saw what looked like a little dead child screaming at her. Okay, so that really isn't for me. Also, if you want to chat to the ghosts, no worries, Murphy has even painted an Ouija board on the roof so guests can contact spirits if they want to.